Hello and welcome to part 3 of our walkthrough of cloud data center networking. So in the first two posts, I walked you through setting up and configuring a virtual data center with the new Internet Gateway product. And in the second part, I showed you how to configure some basic services on the edge, being DHCP, and also deployed a new org VDC network. So in this video, what I'm going to do is go through the basics of how to actually get services through the gateway and published on the internet, and how to ensure that your outbound services are working as expected. So on the screen here you can see the VM that I deployed earlier is a basic turnkey LAMP appliance, and what you've got here is a number of obviously standard HTTP, HTTPS ports, as well as some non-standard ports for the management of this appliance, as well as your basic SSH and SFTP protocol. So what I'm going to do is basically configure the edge gateway to allow a few of these services through, just to give you an idea of what needs to be done to publish services. So let's minimize that and let's go back to our virtual data center and edge gateway, and let's click on edge gateway services. And let's go to NAT. If you think of this gateway as just your standard sort of router and firewall, it does actually make the pages and rules and configuring those rules a little bit more simpler. So effectively here what you've got is source NATs, easily defined as translating source addresses before leaving the gateway. And then you've got destination NATs, which translates a destination IP being received from this gateway. So the default rule that is applied is basically your outgoing NAT, our masquerade out, a source-based NAT for your traffic which is inside the network to get outside. It's what allows you to access the internet from within the VM. So if we have a look here, the options here is to add a source NAT or a destination NAT. So if we go back to our VM, so what we're going to be doing here is doing a network address translation which maps the external gateway IP to the internal IP of this VM, being 10.10.10.50. So let's add a destination NAT. Okay, we're going to apply this on the external interface, because that's where we want the rule to be applied on. Let's select the original external IP, so that is the actual IP of our edge, which is this IP here. So what that means is that we're going to be allowing any port of any type to be translated from that IP to the internal IP. And that's good and it can work, but it's probably better to be a little bit specific. So let's pick on one of the protocols that we had listed. Let's do SSH access. And let's hit OK on that. If we fire up a PuTTY session to that IP, we'll see that we can't get through. It'll time out. That's obviously because we've created the NAT rule, but not the firewall rule. So while it's timing out in the background, let's go back to configure services, and let's add a firewall rule. So again here, the firewall is enabled by default. The default action is deny. Again, we've got a default rule to allow any on the internal to go external, as per the source NAT in the previous tab. So let's go ahead and add a rule for SSH. So the source here is actually any, because we're coming from the internet. Source port is 22, destination is the IP of the gateway. Destination port is 22, and actually the source port can be any port. And let's allow. Okay, and a little trick here is you can actually shift the rules up and down. And we can now make that SSH in our first rule. So let's let that configure up. Hopefully now when that finishes, we should be able to have an SSH session to the VM. There we go. Okay, so we're live on the internet now. Right, so let's go ahead and get a web port and a HTTPS port configured, and we'll see if we can access this basic LAMP site. So again, it's a repeat of that rule there. Adding a destination NAT, original interface, protocol this time is going to be TCP, originating port we're going to use HTTP for web traffic, translated IP internally is the translated port is going to be HTTP. Let's hit OK. We can go straight to the firewall rule and basically duplicate that rule but for HTTP. Destination port is HTTP, protocol is TCP allowing. Let's again move this rule down. Hit OK. And once configured, let's hit the IP on HTTP, and we have our turnkey LAN appliance. Okay, you see specifically with this appliance here, we've got a couple of other options to manage the server. What I'll do here is I'll use one of these ports here to show you how to configure a non-standard port in the vCloud interface. So let's pick on 12320. So TCP, and in here you notice you can actually type in a port. So let's type in 12320. Translated port 10. And again here you can type in a port that you want. 2320. Okay, let's make sure we're good there. Let's go to the firewall and add the firewall rule. Let's give it a meaningful name. Destination port again here is where you can type it in. 20 TCP allow, hit OK. Do the old drag. Click OK. Okay, and all things being equal, if we go back here, hit reload, we now have the custom port open, and we've got the remote SSH. So that ends part 3.